program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the Eau Claire Area School Board. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. All those who are able, please stand. Pledge of Allegiance will be offered.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Are we in compliance with open meeting law notifications?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Let's do a roll call to verify quorum.
Commissioner Klinkhammer?
Here.
Commissioner Luganville?
Here.
Commissioner Torres?
Here.
Commissioner Vu?
Here.
Commissioner Nordin?
Here.
Commissioner Bika?
Here.
Commissioner Harder?
Here.
Thank you. Do we have after the presentation? Okay, good. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. So last Monday night, I gave a presentation to the board, and we had a list of items that we still needed to discuss. And so Tuesday at Budget Development, we reviewed the list of changes and made some recommendations, which are included in the numbers that we're presenting tonight. And so I wanted to walk through those changes just to allow the board as well as the public know what those changes were and the things that we discussed. So on the list of items that were still to be determined last week were computer equipment needs, band uniforms for North High School, the Alliance for Substance Abuse Prevention. That was a question about funding the program because the AODA grant, the Drug-Free Communities grant, ended at the end of September. We had some conversations about iPads for instruction for art, the foundation contribution, as well as band instruments across the secondary schools in the district. So the recommendation of budget development was that we would look to lease staff iPads that were originally reduced and taken out of the budget earlier this year, as well as leasing years 2, 3, and 4 of the student laptops. So the value of that is included in the budget being presented tonight. Band uniforms, there was discussion among the board last Monday night, as well as budget development, that we would approve and recommend those going into the 1920 budget. Budget development recommended funding a 0.1 FTE for the substance abuse position that we've had historically in the district, and we would pay through that for that position through Title IV because we have a grant and we have room available in that grant to pay for that. The iPads for instruction, we would recommend approving the purchase of those iPads for the high schools. And again, that's just that iPad is a different quality and has a bigger hard drive specifically for the art program at the high schools. The foundation contribution that the board has been talking about is going to be earmarked for to make that happen. It's included in the budget. However, we would not pay that and initiate that until there's an agreed memorandum of understanding that the board has formally approved. So it's kind of earmarked and set aside in the 1920 budget. And the last item we talked about was band instruments. And you remember in the 16-17 year, we started a plan to refresh the instruments across the secondary schools in the district. And that's like a 10-year plan of more than $1 million. And so the first year we were able to pay $150,000 to start that refresh. Last year we did $50,000. And so budget development recommended starting a conversation with the foundation to look to be able to kind of get on that cycle, because we know that it's really like a 10-year goal to be able to refresh the instruments. So there isn't anything included in the 1920 budget for the band instruments. Everything else has already been outlined and included in the budget that you're going to be asked to adopt tonight. The operating revenue hasn't changed since you looked at it last week. Again, total operating revenue in funds 10, 27, and 29 is just almost 164 million for the 1920 year. The two big differences are in local taxes and the state source. And so I wanted to share a little bit more information about that. When we talked about our property taxes last week, I told you that the tax levy is going to go up about $1.3 million, but the mill rate is actually going down. And that's because our equalized value of all of the property that falls in the Eau Claire School District, that value increased about just over 5% last year. And because of that increase, then it brings the actual value of each person's home, that levy brings it down. And so we expect the property tax levy for the school district to be $1,242 on a value of $150,000. And so that's good news. We're excited about that. I know when we talk about the tax levy and looking at the referendum, each year since the referendum, our tax levy's gone down. And so again, that equalized value has a big part of that, as well as the other factors of the state aid. The big change in state aid really comes from two things that were passed in the legislative budget. And so overall, our revenue limit increase is 3.07%. We haven't seen an increase like that for several years. And really the driver of that is the fact that with the new budget, they added $175 per pupil as part of the revenue limit increase. That generated about $2 million of that $3 million increase for us. We also have 42 more students in our membership, and so that 3-year average went up by 42 students, which is about $420,000 for the district. And then that per pupil categorical aid, we've been talking about that a lot. It's outside of the revenue limit, and so in the 1920 year, we're getting $742 per student compared to $654 last year, which is $88 per student. And when you multiply that by 11,000 students, that generates that additional $1 million or so for us as well. When we look at our operating expenses, this has changed a little bit since we talked last Monday night. Again, you can see the emphasis is on our staff, and so our salary and fringe budget is up about $6 million when you look at actual to the current budget. Our contracted services, we are expecting to spend about $267,000 more. Our supplies, about $250,000 more. Our capital, we'll spend about $150,000 less. Our insurance is up about $27,000. Our transfer to Fund 27, those increased special ed costs offset by increased state aid is about $1.5 million. And then $73,000 increase in those debt and other small items that we kind of lump together. So that brings our operating expenses to $163.7 million. And that will project us with $127,108 as the difference between our revenues and expenses for the 1920 school year. If everything comes out perfectly just like we planned, that would put our fund balance at about $27.8 million, which is about 20.4% of our Fund 10 operating expenses. We've been watching that very carefully and very closely, and so we're moving in the direction that we want to be moving. So we're excited about that as well. Just big picture overall, all of the revenues by fund, when we add them all together, is just over $167 million. That includes our debt service funds, our food service, and our community service funds. So our total operating budget is almost $146 million. And then when we break it down by expenses by fund, you'll see that number is $170.7 million. The difference between that, again, we talked about last week, was Fund 49 and the capital projects, because we don't have any revenue, because that revenue was issued as a lump sum of debt for all the referendum projects. And so that's really how it breaks down. And then you can see the operating budget expenditures are $145.8. So with that, are there any questions from the board?
Questions from board members?
So thanks for the presentation, and thanks again for...
Commissioner Harder?
Thank you, sorry about that. Thanks again for balancing this budget. We had also a note in the Friday letter just sort of breaking down some of the factors that helped lead us to this place. And I think what isn't on here, I was the one who raised that question, And what I was thinking of was, there's changes to our revenue, but there's also changes to how we're spending money and sort of saving measures we've undertaken. My hope was to look at those together and sort of get a clearer sense of how we got to this sort of surplus, which is a great outcome, particularly in the interest of, within Budget Development Committee, of being able to sort of, okay, what does this mean for next year and the year after and 5 years from now, and sort of help us with our planning from that perspective. So that's the reason behind that question. And it would be helpful to see, I think it looked like there was about a $3.2 million increase in revenue total, or something in that range, is that right?
The 3.2 was just about in the state
Yes.
revenue alone. So in operating funds, we have about $5.6 million increase.
5.6 altogether, yeah.
Yep.
So I think seeing those in context of this would be, for a future budget meeting, would be helpful to just kind of, or for our budget discussion as a whole board, I think would be helpful foundation for us to see between the revenue change here and between these cost cuttings here, we managed to get to this outcome. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyway, that's what I was hoping to see, is revenue plus expenses in that breakdown of factors that led to our surplus.
So Dr. Hardebeck.
So the savings that we sent you on Friday, those savings had to do with measures that we took last year, which then resulted in our bringing in a budget that was less than what was projected by about 1.5%. It also allowed us to have some money to put back into the fund balance. So the budget that you're seeing this year is really predicated and projected based on the revenues that are coming to the district. And with the increases from the state, that has helped us a great deal. We'll continue to put in as many of these cost-saving factors as possible, and as we had said to you, some of them are unpredictable, based on our staffing. But I think we're off to a good start, and I do agree with you that this will be a really good discussion when you have your work session on the budget.
Great, thank you. That was all. I know we don't have I don't think we have a budget meeting before that discussion, so I wanted to sort of squeeze that in there, that notion of putting in the revenue plus the cost savings as a sort of a basis of understanding. That was all. And also, again, thank you for this. This is a great outcome.
Any other questions? Dr. Nordin?
I just have one quick question. The 0.1 FTE for the Alliance, is that in lieu of contributing to what they had asked for, or is that, so that?
It's in lieu of contributing.
Okay, I mean, I think my understanding was that's what sort of we were getting from it anyway, so that's
Yeah.
fine. I just wanted to understand, sort of, it's not a, so, anyway, thank you.
You're welcome.
So
Mr. Schmidt?
just as a clarification, though, could
Right,
you
it-
explain the difference in the cost? Because what the Alliance is asking for is more than the Budget Development Committee is recommending that you spend.
Right,
So-
the district, the amount that we're proposing here pays for the position that the grant paid for, but it does not help support the position or the services done at the county level.
Right, so we're sort of paying for the services that we were receiving in the first place. We're just doing it in a more efficient way to us.
For the staff member that we received in the first place, but not the services that they, because also came with it was professional development and other support, and the coordination
Okay.
at the county level.
Okay.
So it does not help support that piece.
Okay, thanks.
I
That's-
would like to note also that Lisa Gagese is here in case you would like to hear from her on that topic as well.
Any other questions? Commissioner Vu?
I'm not sure how to address this question, but maybe just explanation from anyone. So last week, when we talked about PLC, and one thing that came in my mind is we have quite a bit of expectation for PLC, including the district's expectation that PLC will align and address structurally to bring up the score that we have been seeing lagging. But then in reality, if we ask the district to bring up that number, it also comes with resource. And my question is, the 52% of our expense, where does this include enough resource to help bring up the number through PLC?
That's a Jim question.
That's a Jim question. Jim?
Mr. Schmidt?
It's actually Kim and I are looking at each other because it's a bit of a combination. We've been working with principals quite a bit on stronger implementation of professional learning communities in their buildings. The cost pieces, a lot of that time, and as a matter of fact, today was one of those days where instructional planning took place, where there's professional development in the morning, but instructional planning took place in the afternoon, which was an opportunity for principals and buildings to implement those PLCs. But that's part of the calendar that was adopted by the board several years ago, and we've been working to try to continue to reinforce those practices. And I think you wanted to add something, yeah.
Also this year, at the secondary level, one of our commitments with PLCs is that teachers will have time during their instructional day to collaborate. And at the secondary level, we had set priorities last year as far as trying to start to grow that practice within the day. And principals were able to do it with the resources that they had assigned at the time. So this year, I would say we've been able to meet those structural needs through the master schedule and through changes in the master schedule. As we grow that into other departments and other grade levels, I don't know if more will be needed or if we'll continue to be able to refine. But we were able to do it this year with the resources that we had.
Thank you.
Any other question? From the board? Any question from the audience? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Many of you know me. I'm Lise Skagisi, the Health Department Director. And I was here at your last meeting where you started to talk about this, and I thought it might be helpful to provide some input to you as you make a decision moving forward about these specific budget items. The Alliance for Substance Abuse Prevention has been in existence for a long time. Many of you all got a packet of materials on that. Really, to answer your question, Dr. Nordin, we've been through a grant funding collaborative staff to work on preventing substance misuse in schools for many years. The team of people that have been funded by that grant have been housed at the health department, but they're not health department staff. The work plan that's been developed and the outcomes that have been gained from that work have really happened because of a team of stakeholders around the table making decisions. They happen to be employed at the health department because that's where the grant came in. The team of people funded were really working on Eau Claire County efforts. The .1 position really, Eau Claire School District was lucky. You were the only school district that received grant dollars to fund a small portion of a position to work here. None of the other school districts received any of that funding. The commitment with the Alliance moving forward is that Eau Claire School District is big enough that that funding should continue, so that .1 FTE was built into the budget for the future. But the real core of the budget, the real collaborative work, is funding a point person in this community that really can know best practice and implement efficient and effective best practices in all the schools in our community. Otherwise, each of us has to figure out what we're going to do because we care about this issue, try and figure out what the best way to do that is, and then implement it. By having shared staff, a creative model, we can do that more efficiently and effectively. One person has the job of paying attention to best practice. One person has the job of making sure that coordinated efforts happen across the community, and we get outcomes. So we've gotten really strong, measurable outcomes because of this effort funded by Drug-Free Communities. We have an opportunity moving forward to say, what do we want to do in Eau Claire, using the evidence but tailoring it more specifically. Grants force you to do work in a certain way by funding this model in a different way. we have an opportunity to decide as funders how we do that. The model that's being presented is a risk, and as one of the funders of that model, because I've committed our health department to fund that model, it's a risk because we don't know how it's going to go. And the ask of Eau Claire School District is to be part of forming that in the future. You know, a one-year commitment to say, how do we build this plane as we're flying? The three stakeholder groups, and really to follow up on Dr. Torres, your comments at the last meeting about lots of people should fund this, three stakeholder groups are identified as being most impacted by youth substance misuse: healthcare, government, and schools in our community. So we're starting with that as kind of three legs of the stool. Government has said, yes, we're funding that. So Human Services Department and Health Department at the county and the City County Health Department have said, yes, we're going to fund that moving forward. Not sufficient. We need other funders at that table. The ask out to the school districts is about $36,000 of the total pot has been spread out, with asks to all of the school districts in the county. Eau Claire School District is the biggest ask because you have the biggest student population. We're asking healthcare for about $40,000 of that. The only confirmation we've had so far is from government. Our hope is that Eau Claire does fund this, Eau Claire School District does fund this at the full ask, not at the 0.1 ask. It is a risk, and I get that. It's a unique funding model. We don't have this in the community at this point, but I think Eau Claire's ready for something like this. I think we're ready to try something different and say, this is an important issue, we should pay attention to it. Not being part of it by just funding the 0.1 position, you'll have someone here, but they won't be part of that collaborative model going forward. And I think, of course, we'll bring them in, but I think the decision makers will be the people that fund the collaborative staff. Other schools are waiting to hear from you. So that's why we don't have commitments from other schools, very frankly, and I think you know that. So our ask from the school district was for $22,600. About $9,000 of that was going to come back to Eau Claire Schools to pay for that 0.1. So you won't lose that amount if you fund us at the full ask of $22,600, and that's really what we're looking for today. Again, a community ask and a risk, and I acknowledge that. Health Department has that same risk. It may not work to do this collaboratively. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other question or comment from the public? Hearing none, we'll move forward then. Our next point is adoption of the 2019-20 Eau Claire School District budget.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Commissioner Klinkhammer.
Thank you. So what I understand from Ms. Giesi's talk is that they are asking us for $22,000. We are giving them probably roughly half of that in the form of a 0.1. So really we're saying, well, we'll give you about half of what you're asking for, and it's mostly coming in the form of a person. So there's roughly $13,000 that we're not giving them. The other thing I heard her say is that the healthcare community has not committed to their $40,000 piece. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we could maybe earmark in that $13,000 in the same way that we've done with the foundation to say, if the healthcare community comes forward with their donation, then that $13,000 goes comes from the district as well, so that we're kind of trying to rope everybody in to make it as successful as possible. I mean, I wouldn't want us to be the ones that were shorting this program. So is that something that's a possibility? And maybe, Abby, that's your question.
Commissioner Klinkhammer is proposing to earmark the difference of the 0.1 FTE contingent to the collaboration of...
Can I make a clarification? The cost of the 0.1 pardon me, is about $6,655. The additional part, the difference between the $22,600 is about $16,000.
Thank you. Yeah. What is the pleasure of the other members of the board? Commissioner Vu?
I have something similar to Laura's comment. So we still have other schools that have not coming forward. And my comment is health coming forward, other school coming forward, and if they don't come forward and we earmark, that means if we vote yes to the earmark, but if things don't fall through, we stay where we were.
Do you think,
You need a motion.
yes, we will need a motion to make this earmarking?
I'll make the motion.
A motion by Commissioner Klinkhammer.
Second.
The motion has been seconded by Dr. Nordin. Any further discussion? Commissioner Harder.
Yeah, I can just talk a little bit to the discussion we had in budget about this last week. And some of the concerns had to do with just the model of how this very important service is being funded and the precedent it sets for funding it that way. And I think actually that came up in a Monday meeting as well, but I just wanted to remind the members here that that was one of the major objections that we've heard. We did discuss earmarking, and although it wasn't in our recommendation, it's obviously a possibility. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I would just like to remind that within the model, it would be ideal to have the participation of the private sector to fund this model. That would be the perfect situation. So here comes, with our earmarking comes our encouragement to the private citizens and corporations in the area to support this effort. This is a concern that should be shared, and the responsibilities, of course, also shared. If there are no more commentaries, let's do a roll call to vote for the motion that was presented by Commissioner Klinkhammer.
Commissioner Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville,
Yes.
Commissioner Nordin,
Yes.
Commissioner Vu,
Yes.
Commissioner Harder,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres.
Yes. The motion has been,
Commissioner Bika.
No.
the motion has been approved by majority. So now we need to adopt the budget, and I will need a motion to adopt the budget with the earmarking included.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Luganville. We need a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Harder. Let's do a roll call to approve the budget.
Commissioner Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes.
Commissioner Vu,
Yes.
Commissioner Nordin,
Yes.
Commissioner Bika,
Yes.
Commissioner Harder.
Yes.
The motion has been approved, and in consequence, the budget for 2019-20 has been adopted. Thank you very much. Before I adjourn, I need to report to the board that we have received a resignation letter by Commissioner Joe Luganville. He's taking a position away from home, or it's going to be, I guess, half and half. Good luck with omnipresence. So the process is that Well, he is resigning effective as of November 1st, and we have a process after that day of, we have 60 days after that day to fill in that position. So we will be starting that process right after November the 1st. Would you like to say something, Mr. Lugenbaugh?
I would just say it's been an honor to work with all of you and with all the staff in our district. And I'll miss seeing everybody, but I'm confident, over the last 4 years, we've been able to do a lot of good things together, and I'm really appreciative of all of that. So, thanks.
We would like to express our gratitude for your leadership and your work, and we wish you the best in your additional newest endeavors. That, I would need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Harder and a second by Commissioner Vu. Those who approve the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those who oppose, same sign. And those who abstain, the session is adjourned. Thank you very much.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the Eau Claire Area School Board. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.